Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for MFC Group's FasTech seminar series hosted by TMC and WestTech Sales. We appreciate you joining us. Today, we're presenting Protecting Removable and Embedded Flash Devices from Hackers with Swissbit. Our speaker for this seminar is Ryan Hathaway. Ryan is an experienced applications engineer focusing on embedded memory and security and is a Swissbit NA security expert. Everyone is muted, so please type any questions you have into the meeting chat and we'll monitor those questions throughout the presentation. And we'll make sure that we answer all of those at the end of the presentation. And at the end, please stick around and we are going to do some trivia, and the top 3 winners will each win a prize. So Ryan, I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for setting this up, and thank you everybody for attending. We appreciate the attention, and we hope everybody learns a little something today, and hopefully we learn a little something from all the attendees today. So we definitely we appreciate the opportunity. But like stated, we'll give a quick overview on Swissbit and some of our security solutions and some updates on the security ecosystem in 2024. So a quick agenda, we'll have an intro to Swissbit, who we are, a little bit of our history. That'll be very quick and brief. And then the 3 main security topics we're going to talk about today are identity and access management, okay, who you are and who has access to what you want them to have access to. Data security, the security of your IP, your data, your customer data, user data, things of that nature. And then we'll end with IoT security, right, which is a little bit less of a focus I find in the world, but something we probably should have quite a bit of focus on, right? How are our machines and our computers and our access points, how are they verifying each other? So quickly about Swissbit. Swissbit has been around for 20 plus years now, starting out in the memory world. We were a management buyout of Siemens AG. We entered the memory world in 2001 in the very early stages of memory. We have begun our security line in 2013. Okay, so over 10 plus years in security. We have 3 divisions in Swissbit. The focus of what we'll be talking about today is what we call our ICE division, Embedded IoT Solutions. That's our security solutions. For security, we have security products, physical products. We also make our own security firmware and software. That's all made in-house out of our Hyperstone group or our security group, both located in Germany. And then we also have our own controller in addition to our firmware team. This is something that sets Swissbit off a bit. We manufacture our own security controller and our own security firmware. So we have total control over that development. We have total control over security concerns going on with that development, intellectual property. And we also have total control over things like life cycle and troubleshooting. And again, so our Hyperstone group is located in Constance, Germany, NATO-friendly country. The ICE group is located out of Munich, Germany. And then lastly, we have our memory solutions. Swissbit is, like we said, a long-running memory solution company. We have all the common form factors as far as memory, USB, SSDs, SATA, PCIe, eMMC, etc. I always tell people one of the Swissbit value plays is commitment to longevity, right? And that's something that a lot of probably competitors say. One way we prove that is Swissbit actually still sells things like compact flash cards, which if you had a camera back in the early 90s, probably use the compact flash cards. We still sell those. We still sell MMC, not eMMC, which we also sell, but we still sell MMC cards, which was back in the days of SD cards. It was SD cards versus MMC cards. SD cards won out, but we still sell MMC cards, right? So that's kind of our commitment to longevity. And that aligns with the markets that we serve, things like industrial, things like automotive, netcom, and security plays, right? Our customers need long-term support, and that's what we're here for. And lastly, these are all basically made out of our factory in Berlin, Germany. So that's our advanced packaging, assembly, and test solutions. We do manufacturing at a wafer level, manufacture vast majority of our products totally in-house in Berlin. And I should say our headquarters is in Braunschweig, Switzerland. That's where the Swiss part of Switzerland comes. So been talking a lot about German, but our headquarters is in Switzerland. There's a picture of our factory. It's highly automated, I should say. Over 200 employees working just out of the factory. We've been manufacturing out of Berlin for 20 plus years. High capacity certifications, automotive grade certifications as well. Particular to security, we have the ability to generate security credentials in secure locations where only the particular user has access, and we use that for several of our customers. They want to know that if they have a provisioned security product, meaning we're sending a security product with security already enabled on it, that a very few amount of people that access is controlled, and we have the ability to do that in our factory. We're a 24/7 shift system. We did not shut down even through COVID. We have great control over our supply chain. As we mentioned, a lot of our controllers are made in-house, and our NAND, we have multiple sources for a lot of our major components. So here's an overview of our security products. We have other products in the memory world, but this is our overview of our security product portfolio. The first line of security products we started with 10 plus years ago were basically secure storage media. So these are memory products with security functionality on them. And a lot of that security functionality to be what you'd expect, things like encryption. But there's actually a lot more that goes into a lot of the security products. In addition to things like encryption, we can do things like hidden memory, meaning the memory is totally invisible to an average user. We can do things like secure boot. We can do things like hashing of data. We can do things like counterfeit protection, meaning the memory device is programmed with a secret when it's manufactured, and the memory device will only work with a certain platform that has the knowledge of that secret. So you can't take a platform and plug in a rogue or counterfeit product. So we'll get into a little bit more detail on that, but those are some of the things we can do with secure memory. Another solution we have specifically for Raspberry Pi is secure boot. Secure boot meaning you cannot boot the product off a rogue or counterfeit product. And so a lot of attention is paid to security when a device is already on, which it should be, but also the security should be paying attention into a pre-boot environment. And that's partially what we do with our secure boot for Raspberry Pi product. Next, we have our camera card data logging cards. These are what we call our camera and archive cards. And what these are for is for data recording, whether camera, video, or normal data. And sometimes these are automatic, right? These are plug and play solutions, and sometimes to be done to even prevent deletion or editing by the user. So for example, one application we have is for police drones. The concern is if a police drone crashes, a suspect or an average user can then alter or delete that data. Okay, once they gain access to the card. That's not possible with our camera card or archive card. Next solution, this is not a memory solution whatsoever. This is our first solely security product, and that is our authentication keys for FIDO and for other solutions. It's our FIDO 2 key, which is the blue, and our Key Pro. And we'll go into those in a lot more detail. But these are for password protection, identity, and access management. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit at the end. It will be our IoT solutions, things like a HSM, a hardware security module. That can come in a USB key factor, eMMC, microSD, SD card, a lot of different form factors to provide security solutions for IoT devices. So first area of focus we'll talk about is identity and access management. And we'll talk quickly about the problems with passwords, right? And I have to say, I work in cybersecurity, and I am guilty of a lot of the problems we have with passwords. Things like writing passwords down, using multiple passwords across multiple accounts, making passwords that are easy to guess. I'm guilty of all of the above, and I won't ask for a show of hands to see who is the same, but passwords are a big problem in the security world, right? You see here 555 million stolen passwords on the dark web since 2017. Passwords also have the human element. Okay, people can share their passwords intentionally or unintentionally with hackers, right? It's an issue. And I'll say this, passwords are also not necessarily going anywhere as fast as we would like them to be. I attended a trade show, and it was a FIDO trade show, FIDO-centric trade show, and the focus was on FIDO hardware tokens. It was focused on passkeys, and to get on the Wi-Fi, the username was use passkeys, and then right below that was a password, not a passkey, not a hardware token. They were actually using passwords along with it. So passwords are not going anywhere fast, but it's somewhere that we need to transition if we're going to have safe environments. A lot of that can be prevented with multi-factor authentication. So working in conjunction with a password and using, for example, a hardware token to verify a password. Some studies show that 99.9% of attacks are blocked by multi-factor authentication. So here's the some types of multi-factor authentication. Things like knowledge-based questions, right? So this is things like your mother's maiden name when they ask something like that. It's great that we have those. That's better than nothing, but those things usually are very solvable. They're phishing, they're not NIST compliant, and usually something you can actually Google. Things like email or desktop one-time passwords, again, better than nothing. Also, I'd put SMS one-time passwords in there. Those are not completely phishing resistant, right? And we'll have a use case here where we'll talk about how those are not phishing resistant. So what we have as far as a hardware authenticator falls into the FIDO2 Web Authent, right? It's NIST compliant, it's phishing resistant, and it resists proven to resist phishing attacks. When we talk about phishing, we mean receiving email or some other form of communications where a hacker tries to gain access to your security credentials. I should say our Black Key also has things like a PIV smart card built into it, and also has a one-time password built into it. So our Key Pro is, in addition to being FIDO, also has one-time password, also has PIV. So a lot of security functionality built into one key. So here's an example of, a lot of us I use a phone-based one-time password. And you say, well, that's safe. The one-time password's coming only to me. Here's an example of where that one-time password can be phished. So here we have a hacker. And I should say, I never liked this depiction of a hacker with sunglasses and a hoodie. This is how we think of hackers. This is how I used to think of hackers. We should think more of hackers as far as organized crime or companies that commit crime, right? And a lot of these hackers, I heard an example, there was a hacking group. They have a parking space for their best employee of the month, just like we do, right? The person that hacked the most accounts gets a better parking space. Hackers were having a problem with return to office and work from home, believe it or not. They have logistical problems. The point is, this is not a lot of times one rogue hacker. These are very organized, very sophisticated groups. Okay, sidebar ended. Here's your hacker. Here's me waiting to get hacked. The hacker sends a phishing email. It looks really good. It says, click on this link or to recover your account. And I'm not trained, right? One of the best things you can do for phishing resistant attacks is to train your employees on what to click and who to report emails to. That's not 100%, but it helps. Let's say I'm not trained and I click on the link and go to a fake website. I go to my fake Salesforce account, for example. The hacker is on my real Salesforce account and gains my credential, gains my password by monitoring the fake website. Well, you say, I may be okay. I have a multi-factor authentication. But unfortunately, it's a one-time password and not a hardware token. So the hacker generates a real one-time password that goes to my phone. And what do? Well, I think I've just gone onto the real website, even though I went onto a fake one. So I click accept. I acknowledge the one-time password. The fake website goes nowhere, goes to another fake website. But the hacker now has access to the real website because I have okayed the one-time password, either entered the credential or done a push notification. So here's an example of how a one-time password with a mobile authenticator, they're certainly better than nothing. They're certainly better than passwords by themselves, but they are not 100% phishing resistant. They're not 100% hack proof. If you're using a security token at this step, this laptop would have asked you to plug in your security token, your physical token, and it would have to have been plugged into this physical laptop. The hacker does not have the security token. He cannot gain access to the security token. So we would not be able to complete the authentication. So here's a kind of a graphical representation of that, right? Our Key Pro is strong level security, phishing resistant security, and easy to use. That's the other part we should talk about. The part of the nice things about being part of the FIDO Alliance is our Key Pro works out of the box with hundreds of services, all the main ones, Microsoft, Salesforce, X platform, Facebook, out of the box with a 5 to 10 minute pairing of your account. And you can use multiple dozens or if not hundreds of accounts all with the same key, right? So it's very easy to use. As we all know, security is not easy to use. Users will not use it. They'll find workarounds. They won't use it at all. But it's a strong level of security baked into that. So some of the other features of our Key Pro, it has things like hash-based one-time password, which means one-time password, right? Like you have when you do a smartphone, you generate a code. You can do that at a push of a button as well. And that's useful in offline environments, right? So what the FIDO web authentication only works in online environments for the most part. One-time password you can use for things like VPN access or for things for signing on to Microsoft Windows, for example. And we also have HOTPs listed here. We also have TOTP, which is actually probably more common. That's time-based one-time password. The one-time password changes every minute, basically. We also have things like PIV, personal identification verification, or smart card. With the smart card, you can do a lot of things like digital certificates. You can secure private keys. You can also do things like physical access. So, for example, our Key Pro works with things like HID, MyFair. You can use it to gain access to a building, same as you would with a fob. So with one key, you can use it for physical access to a building. You can use it for VPN access. You can use it for all your online accounts, email access, Salesforce, whatever else. So it's really a one-stop shop. Including things like BitLocker, right? The Key Pro can be used for BitLocker authentication. It can be used post-boot or pre-boot. We are able to provide things like sailed retail packages. This is very useful if you're deploying to, for example, remote employees. You want to make sure that when the key is delivered, it hasn't been changed or altered. We can have it sealed and serialized. And the certificate of origin, like all our security products, it's a made in Germany product. So there are some of the Key Pro facts, again, made in Germany. You can store a maximum of 32 passkeys, supports FIDO2, supports second factor authentication, works out of the box, all the major operating systems, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, works all the major browsers as well. I should say, I don't know if I have this, can't remember if I have this, but we have USB-A and USB-C form factors. It also works on NFC, so you can use it with a cell phone. We are in the process of having it FIP certified for things like military and government applications. So we have a lot of different flavors in the portfolio. So there's, probably should have gone to the slide, but there's our blue key, which is the FIDO2 only key for web authn. And then there's the Key Pro, which has the web authentication, the FIDO, but also has one-time passwords, has smart card functionality, has the physical access. We also provide a key manager tool, which works in Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. You can use it to manage your key, right? So we talked about pretty easy to use, but you can check the serial number, check the firmware version. You can manage your connections for FIDO2 and second factor, including you can revoke access for if you've already connected to Salesforce, you can revoke it using the key manager. You can use it for your PIV certificates, up to 24, and you can use it to generate one-time passwords. Yeah, so there's a little bit more about the key features and what we can do. I spoke to this. I should say the PIV functionality supports public key infrastructure. You can generate certificates. You can import, delete X509 certificates as well. So a lot of functionality just in the key in the manager. So here's a list of some of the attributes of our key versus some of the competitors out there. And I should say this is always, our competitors aren't exactly sending us their features and work in progress. So this is always to the best of our knowledge. But our key, again, has USB-A, USB-C form factors. It's going to have CTAP 2 and 2.1, which is the FIDO standard. As far as we know, we will be the first, this should be, FIPS 140 level 3-3. There are some other FIPS 140-2s, but we'll be the first key with FIPS 140 3-3, which the important part of that is longevity of the standard, right? The FIPS standards do expire. Again, our key will have PIV, it will have one-time password, will have physical access, which is unique to the market as far as we know, and has NFC access as well. So there's a bit on the roadmap. We've already gone over a lot of it, but Key Pro, USB-C, USB-CA. One part I haven't talked about is we also have a wristband available. So the wristband can be targeted for a lot of hands-free environments. So think of the medical world, where a lot of times the medical professionals don't want to deglove every time they want to do access. You can use the wristband for things like physical access, FIDO2, all of what we talked about here, and it just uses an NFC chip inside. The other key part with the wristband is a lot of times you hear, what happens if a key gets lost, or it's difficult to deploy another physical piece to carry around. The wristband solves a lot of those concerns. Maybe useful in an industrial workflow as well. So let's talk about a little bit of the hack of the day, or hack of the month. January 9th, the Security and Exchange Commission platform on X, formerly known as Twitter, was hacked and falsely posted that Bitcoin exchange trade funds were approved. Okay. What was the effect? The cryptocurrency market moved quite a bit, shot up to 48,000. When it was revealed by the SEC that the Twitter account was compromised and the tweet was fake, the prices shot back down to 45,000. Okay, so if you don't have multi-factor authentication, or if you don't think you're up to the best security practices, well, just know that you have company in the fact that the Security and Exchange Commission also doesn't seem to follow those securities. Despite the fact, I should point out that the SEC mandated in 2022 or 2023 that any of their companies in their commission, if they suffered a hack, they must report it. There was mandatory reporting in a certain timeline. And meanwhile, apparently the SEC was not using multi-factor authentication on their own Twitter platform. So how is this particular hack done? And this is becoming a more common method of hacking, right? Hackers are looking for different access points, and one way to do that is what's called the SIM swap. If you're old enough to me, you remember physical SIMs. Physical SIMs are really gone by the wayside, but in a SIM swap, a hacker legally gains access to a phone number. Okay, they do a SIM hack, and a lot of times our phones are constantly connected to the internet. It's a fairly easy thing to do for a hacker to gain access to your phone number. Once they gain access to your phone number, what they do is they would go to, for example, the SEC Twitter account and click the recover. Really want to recover the password. A lot of times the way to recover that password, you get sent a link or you get sent a credential to recover directly to your phone. In this case, the hacker has access to your phone, so they now reset the account and gain access to your account. Okay, that's how a SIM swap works, and it's becoming a more common method of hacking. So in a letter to the Inspector General, Senator Ron Biden and Senator Cynthia Lummis, one a Republican, one a Democrat, it's a bipartisan, recommended investigation of the SEC, but they also recommended, here in my probably too small writing, that the account should have been secured with phishing-resistant hardware tokens, commonly known as security keys, like the iShield Key Pro. I added that part. They didn't put out like the iShield Key Pro. Would have been nice if they did, which are the gold standard for account cybersecurity. Okay, so even the United States Senate, which I don't think has ever gotten anything wrong, is recommending to use the hardware tokens. They're recognizing that the security keys are the gold standard. So quickly moving to protecting access and data using memory devices and on memory devices. And so here's some of our flavors of security devices. There's an eMMC, there's a USB key, SD card, micro SD card. And one of the nice things, at least about the USB keys and SD micro SD card, a lot of times these are retrofittable. So if you have platforms that have been in the field, or if you have customers that have platforms that have been in the field for many years, a lot of times there's new security concerns for these platforms in the field. While using something like a USB key, you can actually retrofit security functionality into those platforms. We have a few different flavors. The main ones are the things like data protection. Data protection is basically only firmware-based protection. With that, you get encryption, and it's hardware-based encryption. It's not software-based encryption with AES-256. You get a fast crypto wipe, which basically means that the data becomes inaccessible with a quick command. That's useful if you don't want the data to be recoverable. It's useful. We hear that quite a bit in a lot of times when a token or a platform can be lost to hackers' hands, military, government, things like that. You have secure authentication, right? The ability to make sure you authenticate either in a pre-boot or post-boot environment. You can do things like role separation. So that means that a user has a certain password and they have access to certain parts of memory or certain functionality, and then that there is a admin functionality which would have a different role and different restriction. This is actually similar to what we use in licensing, for example. So for example, some of our customers can deploy a micro SD card or an eMMC. And if a user wants to purchase new features, more users, more memory, whatever else, they can purchase a license. And this is the way we do it, different role separation. So there's a password protection to prevent that. And that doesn't have to be an online or offline scenario. It can be an offline scenario. Also, with the data protection flavor, you get things like a hidden partition. So again, that's totally invisible memory. And that's useful for things like audits, right? Whether it's a financial audit, or also a lot of our devices are used in travel. So things like locomotives, things like government vehicles. You can have data that's hidden and can be audited later after the fact. We also have the ability to do what's called worm memory or write once memory. So you can do things like boot code. So once you write it, it's burnt into the memory. The data can be read, but it can never be rewritten or never can be changed. We also have a premium edition flavor. That's basically the firmware level with a secure element. And with a secure element, you get integrated secure element. You get higher level of hardware encryption. You can do digital key store. You can do public key infrastructure. There's a lot more you go into it. I should say also, secure element is much more, has additional security protections. For example, it's safe against a physical hack, meaning somebody taking a memory chip off of a part and trying to access it that way. Secure element, they couldn't do that. The data would be scrambled. The data is tamper-proof. You don't get that with firmware-based. So here's an example of a eMMC solution, right? Replacing, for example, a eMMC with a TPM. Very common in a lot of either netcom devices, mobile devices, IoT devices, to deploy an eMMC and then a TMC, trusted platform module separately. It's a hardware chip. With our product, we can integrate the secure element into the eMMC. So you get a reduced BOM, you get greater power efficiency. You also have less access points. right? You have a certified secure element. The data being transacted between the secure element and the eMMC, for example, private keys or public keys or encrypted data, is now you can't snoop that data because there's no access point. It's all done within the eMMC, right? The eMMC never exposes the keys, for example. So here's a quick overview of some of the security functionality within eMMC. And I should say the eMMC standard comes with a lot of security functionality. It's fairly high level just within the standard, things like write protection, erase trim. But with our security products, you get things like encryption, right? As far as I know, we'll be the only eMMC part that will have it built-in encryption on it. You can do things like cryptographic hash. So you can use the data to be hashed, right, which is a mathematical operation to make the data one way. We have a true random number generator built in, not just a random number generator. You can do things like signed firmware updates. So meaning when you update your firmware, by signing it, you're verifying that the firmware is genuine. And also you can check the person updating it. You can do things like, again, hidden storage, one-time program memory. We have RSA capabilities with our premium edition and digital key storage with public key infrastructure as well. So a lot of additional functionality built into the eMMC, some of which are unique in the market. So there's another overview. I think we've gone over this a few times. I won't do too much. Maybe just talk about, again, counterfeit protection, secure video recording is possible as well, things of that nature. These are just a more detailed feature set for our different flavors. So here's a kind of a visual block diagram of some of the things we can do within one memory product. For example, you can have a boot partition. We talked about this, totally write protected. It's read only. Our customer burns the data and cannot be overridden. You can have an operating system. I think there's more here. Yes. Operating system partition, which only visible after authentication of the system, cannot be modified. The content is controlled by the card user. Again, this is also, it's useful for our customers to make sure that their data is not being altered, but it's also making sure their data is not being necessarily harvested. It's protecting their intellectual property. For example, private data, which is read-write, but also pin protected. It's a more dynamic part. And then lastly, we have what's the hidden memory, what we call our NVRAM, right? And this is on the physical storage, but totally invisible to the user. So this data can only be accessed using special Swissbit software on a controlled computer. So lastly, we'll talk about our hardware security module, or HSM, for IoT devices. So, the question comes out, where would you store your passports in a hotel room, right? And passports or any kind of valuable information. Would you store them on tabletop, or would you put them in the safe, right? Hopefully, most of us would put them in the safe or put them in a secure location. But the question becomes, what about the digital identities of things, right? And it's important to talk about, when we talk about identity in the security world, it's not just a identity of a person, right? A lot of times our machines have identities, right? I'm not trying to get into an iRobot debate, but in the real world, when we talk about security, our devices have identities. Okay, I'm not saying they're living, breathing things, but they have digital identities. When somebody at home is trying to access, using their laptop, trying to access this industrial line, that laptop most likely has been paired and verified. It has a digital identity that is allowed access to these sensors or to these controls. Well, the way to protect that access is through a hardware security module, or an HSM, right? And here you see an example of a USB key. It can also be used in SD, micro SD, and eventually in the eMMC. The first role, it is a USB key, and this controls the access between IoT devices. Okay, this does the verification. It stores the keys that are between machines. Okay, we actually developed this kind of as a request of AWS Greengrass, which is their IoT service. So it's an IoT Greengrass qualified device. Greengrass did have some software HSMs and some other ways of verifying credentials, but there was really no easily deployable, retrofittable hardware device. So that's where we came in. Also works with Mender. If you're familiar with Mender, Mender is commonly used for things like remote access or virtual updates. So when you have somebody that has enough access to do a firmware update with a HSM, the HSM would do the verification of that person and store the keys of that person. So the secure element, there's a secure element inside here. It's embedded in hardware. It's tamper-proof for any IoT application. It's retrofittable, works on all open source standards, including PKCS number 11, PKCS number 15. So it's deployable, obviously, with what we're talking about here, but it's anyone that works with these open standards will be able to deploy this in their standards as well. So here's a little bit of the difference in overlaps between HSM and a TPM. TPM meaning Trusted Platform Module. That focuses on securing the platform, which HSM prioritizes safeguarding the things like the keys, performing cryptographic operations, including things like hashing, digital signing, random number generation, and providing hardware-based protection. So TPM is integrated a lot of times into the hardware. It's a solder-on piece. The HSM is a separate device connected via interfaces, different interfaces available. TPM is usually included HSM as an additional piece. So here's an example. Let's see. So here's an employee, maybe working from home, or somebody working on a service desk who may not even be a full member of the organization, but maybe a contracted member, is using the internet to go through a gateway and then controlling or accessing manufacturing devices, operations, engineering, maintenance, controllers, network systems. Well, if you plug the hardware security module into things like the controllers and the gateway, what you do is you pair the employee's laptop or phone with the device. So there's a key that's generated that never leaves the hardware security module. Okay, can't be hacked, can't be snooped or anything like that. And that is going to handle the verification between the gateway and the employee. Can't be duplicated. It's the only way to generally access the gateway. So if a hacker does gain access to your gateway, if you didn't have an HSM plugged in, they could do things like shut down operations. They could perform, they could harvest data and then encrypt it. They could snoop your IP. All sorts of various nefarious things could go on. HSM protects against all of those, okay, with the HSM plugged in to these devices. So with that, I did a lot of talking. Open the floor for questions or comments. I know we have some trivia at the end there, but if you find any things I got wrong beforehand, no prize for that. You just join the club, I guess.
Great presentation, Ryan. Thanks.
Thanks.
You. So like Ryan said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat and we'll be happy to answer those for you.